welcome to Tribune podcast. I hereby end the rather long hiatus in a regular podcast and essay series here on Tribune, and I think that it is fitting to make this initial podcast of new cycle, so to speak, a bit off-handed. The reason is I picked the subject that is not really the subject matter I tend to do extensively, and that's a subject of politics. To be more precise, relationship of ideas and politics. I don't do party politics because I'm not expert for that, let alone expert for American party politics. And American politics will be the subject matter of this podcast, at least initially. I.e., I will say a few words about President Donald Trump's inaugural address, which I find rather worrisome. The reason why I find it worrisome is because it comes all by itself into my field of expertise, so to speak. It's not party politics address. It's not simply Republican Party president-elect address. It's a Messianic address. This is a Messianic speech. I think it is summed up with Trump's conclusion, which I will quote. At the end of his speech, he says, "In America, impossible is what we do." That's Trump's conclusion. And this conclusion comes after the series of principles of his politics he was laying out throughout the address speech, some half an hour long. And indeed, I would agree with Trump on the impossible part, because all those principles, and I won't go extensively into listing what are those, are guidelines to turn the clock back, to revive and resurrect, so to speak, American modernity. Modernity in general, but American modernity in particular. In the terms that probably his associate Elon Musk would approve of, and I wouldn't, but I'll use it anyway, he plans to reboot America. This, my friends, is impossible. It's not impossible due to American incompetence. It's impossible because modernity is the age that has some outlines and principles that cannot be changed, because if they are changed, it is not modernity anymore. And one of those is that the arrow of time is irreversibly pointed towards the future. There is, in a word, no turning back. If you are a modern man, you must progress further. Of course, as those who follow my work know, my opinion, somewhat educated opinion, is that modernity is over. Moreover, that it is over for a long time now. It ended up being dissolved or broken down, depending what part of the world we are talking about. In ex-socialist bloc in Europe, in Eastern Bloc, it broke down like skyscraper. Einstürzend and Neubauten, as you would say in German. That's of course the name of a famous rock band. The building falling down. This was because it was a socialist modernity. It was a Marxist initiated modernity that was not very apt to be dissolved, as it happened in the West, to be as a rather insightful English author, Mary Harrington, likes to say, to turn into liquid modernity, to become liquefied. This, however, is what happened in the West, and it's still happening. But I would disagree with Mary on the point that we are now dealing with liquid modernity. We are not dealing with modernity anymore at all on the level of ideas and principles. We are dealing, I would say, with posthuman age, in which we already stepped in. It was preceded by so-called postmodernity, and postmodernity is a professional term to denote something you don't understand. Postmodernity is in fact the process of dissolution of modernity. To sum up, what I mean to say by this is that where I stand now, all of this ended up in a very radically different way, and circumstances are radically different. It is one of the reasons why I'm in the maybe last year or two of my work completely skipped commenting on, for instance, American politics. That most of my compatriots and people from my part of the world do. I don't think we are really qualified to do that, because differences on a deeper level are too big. However, this one thing I do understand, this what Trump said, and I know that it's impossible, and he will not accomplish impossible, rest assured, but he will nevertheless, I believe, really try to do it. And this is what is worrisome. When you say that you will do impossible on a civilizational level, because that's how USA understands itself, you are engaging in Messianic action. You are changing the world in a way that regular human being cannot. This, I'll repeat, is unbelievably worrisome. Now, what Trump wants. He wants to have to bring back, that is, all those things that made America proverbially great. He wants to resurrect American culture. Culture in the sense of that almost Oswald Spenglerian sense of the inner life of people, of inner life of cultures. This is something I believe that America lost even at the inception of 21st century, marked by that terrible event of 9/11, which is, to my mind, astonishingly forgotten. And I think that was a defining moment in creating, for instance, these unbridgeable gaps between left and right in American politics and consciousness. And now about this subject, I've been moderately informed because I know quite a lot of Americans and I observe their behavior. People tend to forget this, that especially people on the right who are unqualifiedly supporting Trump, they forget that there was before him another messianic president-elect, and that was Barack Obama. Barack Obama also was recreating America, making America great again, but not those features that right-wing Republicans consider to be primary, but those that, let's say, those who are around this so-called blue camp, gathered around blue camp, considered to be prime. Now, I always like to illustrate this to my compatriots with the movie, image from the movie Easy Rider, the quintessential film of the 60s, late 60s and hippie movement, where the hero of the movie, one or two heroes played by Peter Fonda, has this jacket with American flag. And I remember as a kid that it struck me as odd, because I consider this hippie way of looking on things was internationalist and cosmopolitan and so on, whereas in Easy Rider, it's not that. It's a film that was made by Americans for Americans. It is a film about America, about two bike riders tuning in and dropping out from the contemporary American civilization, trying to find a true America. In essence, this is a form of patriotism. And this patriotism about America, which is indeed Messianic, which considers America to be a special place in the world, is one half, let's say, dividing this sharply for the sake of argument, one part of this Messianic mentality. The other part is the one that you can tie with private enterprise, American isolationism, non-interference in others' affairs, being a home of the brave, and so on. Something that is embodied now in Trump. So the ideal is split in two, and these two are irreconcilable, partly also because of American left, old American left, being absolutely traumatized by not only 9/11, but what 9/11 incited in American politics with the George W. Bush invasion of Iraq, of inception of and encouragement of absolute paranoia, not only in USA but throughout the world. By the way, those were times where so-called alternative media got their boost. From Alex Jones onwards, Alex Jones, who is now a great Trump supporter. So let us not forget this, because it tends to be forgotten. And to get back to Trump's inaugural address, I don't think after such split that USA can produce the same, let's say, the same spirit it had before this, before even, let's say, fall of the Berlin Wall. I think it's over. I remember discussing these things when I was still a student in the late 90s, before 9/11, with some friends, because we felt this hollowness of the ideals that in previous times seemed to us so appealing, something to strive for, something to try to emulate even. I don't think you can resurrect these things. What I not only think, but I know, is you cannot resurrect modernity. American modernity has passed, because all modernity has passed. We are living in a different epoch, and what Trump is trying to do is creating a virtual image, virtual that is to say, simulacrum of modernity. Problem is with virtuality and creating simulacra, is that you cannot do this without violence. Now, violence in the most wide possible sense. I don't mean necessarily military violence. I mean acting upon a thing contrary to the nature of that thing. This is violence. So he will have to act upon the reality of America, of USA, in a violent manner. In this or that sense, I cannot predict in all forms this violence can take. And this is terrible. It
is my honor.
Sorry. To pull once more Oswald Spengler into the fray, now more than 100 years from the publication of his Untergang des Abendlandes, the decline of the West. I don't like Spengler, by the way. I like reading him because he's an extremely insightful man, but I don't take his main thesis seriously. Nevertheless, I think Oswald Spengler is useful here because he argued that at the point of the culture is dying, it comes into a phase that he calls civilization, very crude wording, by the way, where civilization is, where culture is in fact dead, but it is still moving, imitating, civilization imitates the living culture, like a sort of zombie. And for this, civilization needs, at the end of its final phase of dying, it needs authoritarian figures, so to speak, Caesars, as he calls them. Uh, that's something, for instance, he talks about various historical periods, for instance, Roman Empire, that the phase of the empire is already beginning of the end, instead of beginning of the rise of the Roman culture, and so on and so forth. I will talk about Spengler in detail in the future, because there are some interesting things there, uh, especially in the context of German culture and philosophy, about which I have something to say in the future. But in this context, I think this would be a very good, at least, analogy with what happens now with Trump. He's rebooting the simulacrum. He's rebooting the dead culture, unfortunately. Culture that has absolutely no vitality, at least in my estimation, anymore. And this has to be, as I said, done violently. And his very idea that by his fiat, by his will, to which he hopes, I guess, American people will coalesce, he will do it. He will do the impossible. And this is what I find worrisome. Implications are very numerous. We'll see what the future will bring. And this brings me to the second and final subject that I want to point out in this speech, from this speech, presidential address, is his attempt to define human sexuality by decree, what he calls, not him, but people who wrote one of these presidential decrees for him, biological reality. The affirmation of biological reality, that there are only two sexes, male and female, and that woman is adult human female. This is not true. That's the first thing. The second thing, and more important thing, is you cannot define reality by decree. Reality is a reality. Let us put aside that transgender is what they are trying to combat here. They combat it in completely wrong way, because they are doing what their opponents are doing. Transgender, as all LGBTIQ identities and politics, is based upon a redefining of reality, making, let's say, legal fictions into reality. You don't do that in this way. I will not go too much into detail because I wrote extensively about this. It concerns the next letter in the LGBTIQ acronym, letter I, which stands for intersex. The decree that Trump will put in practice, I guess, at least in its initial proemium, proclamations I just noted, is in fact something that makes intersex practically legal, because intersex is based upon an idea that there is no gender, that there is only biological sexuality, and this sexuality is not binary but spectrum. Indeed, it is my contention that if you take human sexuality, human being in general, its division into men and women, as purely biological, as purely animal, then you end up with this by necessity. And this will produce all kinds of new and bizarre troubles, much worse than transgender. So it was very wrong, in my opinion, to do this. And I don't think this will bring any good. I think it will bring a lot of bad, because once Trump is out of power, the people that support LGBTIQ, if there is one decree, presidential decree, they would not be obliged to change. It will be precisely this decree, because on the stage, in the stage that LGBTIQ is now, precisely such understanding of genderless sexuality is what is needed to further it. And Trump's experts, let's call them so, came to these ideas from people like J.K. Rowling and some biologists and such radical feminists that are combating these transgender advocates, and they are dissidents of that LGBTIQ revolution. They are not true dissidents. They are historische Abfall, as Hegel would say. They are refuse of the revolutionary process, the piglets that are being devoured by the pig of revolution, as it is often said in that famous phrase, that the revolution is a pig that devours its young. So Trump should have used nothing from those people. Now, this is also something that brings us back to my original point about possible and impossible. I don't think that LGBTIQ can be stopped by fiat, by will of the political authority. I don't think that's possible at all, because LGBTIQ is a feature of essential feature of posthuman age. Posthuman age didn't come into existence because somebody decided it should come. It is a logical extension of modernity. It is a purpose of modernity, in fact, a hidden purpose, the purpose that was hidden and very hard to see. Oh, even deep into 20th century, there were people who figured this out in advance. They figured out in what direction this will lead, but they were very far and few in between. So my conclusion is this: Trump is exploiting American nostalgia for its former spirit, if not power, because America is as powerful as ever, maybe the most powerful in its history, but it lacks its soul. Problem is that the soul of USA, as taken into isolation, is that it is the soul of modernity. And finally, this is what Alexander Dugin called eschatological politics. And this is very dangerous aspect, because I do believe, contrary to many experts, I do believe that Dugin is pretty good, a pretty accurate interpret of the will of the Tsar, or the will of the ruling Russian elite. And his idea is that there is no politics except Messianic politics, especially now in what we call postmodernity, in fact posthumanism. And eschatological politics means Messianic politics. That's the politics that is apt to bring about the end of the world, the judgment day, if you want to call it. Dugin calls this Endkampf. He borrows the term from some post-Nazis after the Second World War. And this Endkampf is the meaning of the phrase multipolar world. Multipolar world is a world system or world order, or rather even disorder of few power centers that are all eschatologically and messianically driven and extremely powerful. They swallow nation states and such trivial things, as is mine nation state, by the way, and then they can come into a phase of final polarization on two poles, two geopolitical, spiritual, and whatever you want to call them poles, that get into total war. That's what Dugin wants, and that's the eventuality of Trump going easy of Russia is, contrary to all appearance, quite insignificant to him, because he believes this is the process that is completely out of human hands. This is a destiny of the planet Earth. He hopes that this destiny will be a quote-unquote ideocratic world empire. That's combination of closest Historical image I can conjure up is a combination of Soviet Russia, Stalinist Russia, and Third Reich, National Bolshevik global empire, or the empire of the West, led by United States, that is to say, a kind of posthuman cybernetic monstrosity, something along the lines of maybe Aldous Huxley's Brave New World on steroids or something like that. I'm sure, I haven't checked, but I'm sure he's very happy about Trump's inaugural address. This, I think, is reason enough for all of us not to be happy about it. Thank you for your attention. This was Branko Malic of Kali Tribune signing off.